We are a group of second-year occupational therapy students, and we will be discussing the importance of occupations within the incarceration system to help reduce recidivism and increase the availability of re-entry services through occupational therapy.
Here is our elevator speech summary. Occupational therapy is concerned with helping individuals become as independent as possible in order to participate in activities that bring meaning to them. Participation in everyday occupations or occupational performance is essential for individuals and has a favorable impact on both physical and mental health and well-being. Participation leads to life satisfaction and is crucial for psychological, emotional, and skill development. Are you aware of the benefits OT presents when incorporated into the lives of incarcerated individuals? A barrier identified in research by Humbert et al. Was occupational deprivation during incarceration. These individuals were unable to carry out occupations that were meaningful to them during incarceration and later found it difficult to reintegrate them into their life after release. In addition, offenders who participated in a work release program were 47.72% less likely to return to prison when compared to offenders who did not partake in a work release program. Our area of need, occupations during incarceration. So the need for occupational therapy in jail and prison systems, and to decrease mental health issues and recidivism rates in incarcerated and previously incarcerated individuals. A barrier identified in research by Humbert et al. Was occupational deprivation during incarceration. These individuals were unable to carry out occupations that were meaningful to them during incarceration and later found it difficult to reintegrate them into their life post-release.
The connection to the OT practice framework would be occupational engagement of leisure, financial management, community mobility, social participation, community participation, and then health management would be social and emotional health promotion and maintenance, communication with healthcare system, work for employment, interests and pursuits, and then overall education.
Demographics for juveniles. The Indiana juvenile recidivism rate is 24.8%. There were 532 releases and 132 returnees. 71 were juveniles and 61 were adults. Approximately 88.5% of juvenile releases had not been incarcerated in an adult facility within 3 years of their 2018 release from a juvenile institution. Approximately 27.1% of the Hispanic youth returned to the Department of Correction, which was a higher rate than any other major race or ethnicity. African American youth were the next highest with a 26.7% recidivism rate, followed by a Caucasian youth at 24.3%, and then a youth with an unidentified race was 19.5%.
Some of our adult demographics include the Indiana adult recidivism rate, which is 29.79%, and the breakdown of that being 33.6% African American, 28.5% being Caucasian, and 20.4% Hispanic. We found that male offenders had a higher recidivism rate when compared to female offenders. And the younger the offender is at release, the higher the chances are of reoffending. 61.54% of all recidivists served less than 5 years in incarceration, and offenders who participated in a work release program were 47.72% less likely to reoffend in comparison to offenders who did not. Indiana's recidivism rate is ranked number 24 of all states. Offenders who received visits from family or friends while incarcerated were 17.47% less likely to recidivate compared to offenders who did not receive any visits, and offenders who had zero conduct violations during their incarceration period were 34.9% less likely to recidivate when compared to offenders who had at least one conduct violation.
For audience and population, we're going to look at case managers, social workers, individuals with criminal records, jail and prison systems, education systems, religious organizations, public healthcare workers, mental health professionals, and occupational therapy practitioners and CODAs.
Our goal for promotion and prevention was preventing dysfunction and occupational deprivation during incarceration. For a person, it would be promoting occupations and individuals. For group, it would be increasing group activities while incarcerated to increase participation. And for the population, it would be decreasing the recidivism percentage within the incarcerated population.
Aurora is a program located in Evansville. They provide re-entry services centered around the housing crisis in Vanderburgh County. So they assist with housing deposits, short-term rental assistance, case management, and coordination with other services such as social work. In a statement released in 2018 from the program, they stated, "Since the life of Aurora program, our 3-year recidivism rate is 18%. This represents over a 50% drop in recidivism for Vanderburgh County." To be eligible to receive assistance from Aurora, the individual must have been sentenced to 12 or more months for a felony offense. They must be released no more than 6 months from their sentence at the time of requesting services. They must be below 60% of the area median income for Evansville, and they must be able to obtain income. Another local community resource located in Evansville is Hope Hall. Hope Hall provides residential reentry services and provides 100 beds for formerly incarcerated individuals. In order to be eligible for Hope Hall services, residents must maintain employment, follow court orders, and address goals such as mental health and addiction treatment and educational needs and life skills development during their stay at Hope Hall. In addition to the local community resources available, the Indiana Department of Corrections initiated the Hoosier Initiative for Reentry, also known as HIRE. They have a goal of helping ex-offenders integrate back into society and to help them find sustainable employment. Areas of impact related to recidivism in Vanderburgh County include mental illness, homelessness, education, and the cost to the community. According to research conducted by Shashane et al., offenders with untreated mental illness have a higher recidivism rate and a greater number of criminogenic risk factors than those without mental illness. When we were conducting our research for this presentation, we initially included a stakeholder, and that was Sergeant Eric Nielsen from the Vanderburgh County Sheriff's Department. And he made the point that the availability of mental illness treatment definitely has an impact on the rates of recidivism in his experience. He made the comment that the state hospital closed down, which left individuals on their own with medication management, and so many people were not able to manage their medication, so it led to recidivism. In addition to the obstacle of medication management upon the closure of the state hospital, so many individuals who resided in the facility were left unhoused. In Evansville, as of 2022, the population of unhoused individuals was at 364 individuals, and that was only in Evansville. Formerly incarcerated people are nearly 10 times more likely to be homeless than the general public, and they are 514 times more likely to be charged for a crime and have an average recidivism rate of 68%. An additional area of impact is education. In research conducted by Lockwood et al., the recidivism rate among the offenders being studied who had a college education was 31%. This rate increased to nearly 56% among offenders who had an education below a high school level. Recidivism also poses a large cost to the community in which it is taking place. In 2017, Indiana's recidivism rate was at 37%. If we think that back to that previous statement from Aurora on their recidivism rates, 37% of Aurora's 55 clients means 22 individuals would return to the incarceration system. All in all, this would cost around $281,050 in taxes. Since then, the state's rate has decreased and Aurora has grown, so we can assume there has been a decrease in community costs due to the re-entry services such as education, mental health treatment, and substance abuse care. Recidivism also poses a large cost to the community in which it is taking place. In 2017, Indiana's recidivism rate was at 37%. If we think that back to that previous statement from Aurora on their recidivism rates, 37% of Aurora's 55 clients means 22 individuals would return to the incarceration system. All in all, this would cost around $281,050 in taxes. Since then, the state's rate has decreased and Aurora has grown, so we can assume there has been a decrease in community costs due to the re-entry services such as education, mental health treatment, and substance abuse care.
Systems and structures. Access to Public Records Act provides that a person has the right to access information regarding the government and the official acts of public officials and employees. The statute also states that government officials have a responsibility to provide that information to you. An impact on a person who has been incarcerated could be employers are able to see the charges and not want to hire them, and anyone at their job can see their charges, which can create an unsafe workspace and also form judgment. Indiana My Case. This is not a law, but a public access to an individual's charges if they are searched by name. The impact can allow anyone who has your name to find your charges, and it can be unsafe to them. Indiana's Second Chance Law. Individuals with criminal records are allowed to request that public access to their criminal histories be restricted through impungement. Any case that has been restricted then will not show up on a criminal history check by non-criminal justice organizations like prospective employers. This impact can allow a second chance, which will also create a non-judgment work environment and healthy lifestyle due to an income for that individual who was previously incarcerated.
Our stakeholder was Sergeant Eric Nelson from the Vanderburgh County Sheriff Department.
After talking to Sergeant Nielsen, he was able to provide us resources that individuals who are incarcerated have access to. One thing that we thought was really interesting was a streaming service. They provide tablets, but they are at a cost to the inmates. They're able to access movies, YouTube-like videos, and they are able to pay for that stuff by working. He also mentioned that inmates pick up skills in barbering and art that are applied, that are also applied post-incarceration, and they're able to visit with their families through the tablets or as well in person. They have religious studies, group therapy, etc. They have Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, which are government funded. They do not have to pay for that. And they also have recreational activities, which are include games and working out. Now, he said the larger facilities provide jobs to the inmates, which can include fabricating license plates for the state or textile shops to create items for the military. He stated, however, there are occupational limitations, safety concerns of equipment and or supplies. They have to be wary of weapon or self-harm possibilities. Something he said was that anything can be used as a weapon in prison, and they always have to make sure that they're wary and cautious with equipment.
So current occupational needs, rehabilitation for disabled individuals, disabled individuals are not able to be housed in general population due to their own safety, so they are housed in medical, which takes away a cell for someone else who's in need of medical attention, and vocational rehabilitation to help inmates find their niche and provide resources for job searching, and post-incarceration resources, information regarding court dates, probation, home detention, etc., provide bus token or other transportation, offer individual a free bicycle if they decline that bus token and or other transportation, and provide an anti-overdose kit containing resources pertaining to rehab and prevention, and this does include Narcan.
All in all, there's a large correlation between the homeless population and reoffending. Mental illness, post-traumatic stress disorder, drug use, and the overall lack of community resources all play a role in this. When we spoke with Sergeant Eric Nilsson in our initial interview, he explained to us that if someone is living on the streets and it's cold, they're going to go into a business to seek shelter even if they've been banned. Consequently, they're going to be charged for trespassing and end back up in the incarceration system. In other words, the consequence is worth the crime. It is our stance that occupational therapy practitioners could provide benefits through servicing a variety of ages and diagnoses, whether they be mental or physical. Vanderburgh County Jails contracts with Quality Correctional Care. Any availability of occupational therapy would be provided by Quality Correctional Care, not hired directly through Vanderburgh County. There would be no imminent risk to OTPs in the incarceration system. Services could be provided through a physical barrier or in person with an officer present. Services may also be provided through inmates' provided personal tablet through Zoom. One of the research studies I analyzed was occupational barriers during incarceration and quality of life, conducted by Smith et al. In this study, researchers attempted to identify whether a correlation existed between the number of barriers experienced during incarceration and the quality of life post-release. 93% of incarcerated individuals are eventually released. More than 50% of them return within 5 years, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. According to Smith et al. In this research, occupational deprivation during incarceration has been identified as a significant hindrance to successful community integration. Implementing occupation-based programs during incarceration that address the environment domain may reduce the number of barriers experienced during incarceration and increase the environmental aspects of quality of life, thereby possibly reducing the risk of recidivism. The level of evidence for this study was a level 2B. It was a pilot study conducted through electronic survey, which makes it qualitative. The survey included demographic questions, a checklist of barriers developed on the basis of a literature review, and the World Health Organization Quality of Life short form. Participants included 48 adults, 30 men, 17 women, and 1 unidentified. The number of barriers and quality of life scores were analyzed utilizing IBM SPSS, statistics software using Pearson correlation. The strength of evidence of this study is moderate. Multiple moderate level studies were utilized in this research. The strength of the study has the potential of improving if translated to a larger and more specific population and by utilizing additional strong and moderate resources.
The article I chose is the evaluation of the jail-based occupational therapy transition and integration services program for community reentry by Yeagers and colleagues in 2020. The level of evidence is 2B. This study is a retrospective, mixed quantitative and qualitative design, which aimed to explore the feasibility of the start of an occupational therapy administered reentry program known as OTTIS in a jail. 63 participants were accepted in the first 5 cohorts from January 2017 to May 2018. To break this down, full 8-week consisted of 24 participants, the partial 8-week consisted of 33 participants, and other was 6 participants, which includes those who were admitted but did not start and those who declined. The OTTIS initial evaluation consisted of an occupational profile and an array of occupational and health assessments. Feedback did support the feasibility of implementing the jail-based occupational therapy transition and integration services program, and the strength of evidence is moderate as there were a small number of participants.
For my article, I found a study about the evaluation of a prison OT in formal education program, and it was a pilot study. The level of evidence was 2B, and the type of evidence was a pilot study of strengths/weaknesses of an educational program by OTs for men living in a minimum security prison that has been incarcerated for 10 plus years. The interview of 27 participants, outside researcher, and 3 former program participants as co-researchers conducted the interviews. The procedure included an audio tape semi-structured interview with an OT. The topics during the interview were technology, socialization, finances, employment, health, and education, as well as the education program structure and re-entry concerns. The strengths of the evidence were moderate. Confidence is limited by the number of participants. IRB and Department of Corrections approval included the holistic approach in the interview.
An article I found was Justice-Based Occupational Therapy Initiative and its Advancing Occupational Justice and Criminal Justice Systems by Yeagers et al. In 2020. The type of evidence was a 2B, and this was a qualitative process aimed at identifying themes and key areas of focus at justice-based occupational therapy meetings, also known as JBOT. JBOT was established to explore the role of OT in justice-based practices and identify information for a wider audience by spreading resources about the role of OT in justice-based practices. 8 JBOT meetings in the U.S. and 2 international were with an average of 14 attendees per meeting, included instructors, researchers, directors of OT and OTA education programs, and students. 4 themes were emerged throughout those meetings, and it was advocacy and policy, education, research, and resources. Concerns and solutions were established for each of these themes, and which will ultimately advance awareness of non-sanctioned occupations and occupational therapy practice for the prevention of incarceration and rehabilitation of individuals who are at risk for or are involved in criminal justice systems. The strength of evidence was moderate. I said this because there was only a small number of meetings, and however, there were different occupations that were present during those meetings.
This article, titled The Distinct Value of Occupational Therapy in Corrections, Implementation of a Life Skills Program in a County Jail, relates to occupational therapy being implemented in jail and prison systems. So the level of evidence here is a 2B, and this study has a case-controlled design in which Level 2 OT students visited the Hancock County, Ohio jail and designed and implemented a life skills program for the inmates prior to re-entry into the community. Modules included in this life skills program are interpersonal communication, employment, finance, leisure, and community resources. Prior to designing the program, inmates completed an occupational profile, were administered the Allen's Cognitive Level Screen to determine cognitive status, and completed the Adolescent and Adult Sensory Profile. Out of the 59 participants, 46 were men, 13 were women, with a mean age of 30. The Hancock County, Ohio jail chose to fully implement the program into their jail system. The strength of this evidence is moderate, and limitations include few documented outcomes at the beginning of the program design due to disagreements in focus areas, and space and security limit program opportunities for intervention. The overall strength of our acquired evidence is moderate. All 5 articles identified are level 2B. Multiple moderate level studies were utilized in our cumulative research, and there is some potential for improvement, including identifying research conducted on larger and more specific populations, and identifying research supported by strong or moderate studies.
The solution would be contracting service for OTPs and consultation services through jail and prison systems. Other areas can be social work, activities therapists, directors, OTA, music therapists, psychologists. The need, occupational deprivation in jail prison systems impacts life post-release, decreased mental health issues and recidivism rates in incarcerated and previously incarcerated individuals. The consultation process for OTPs and consultation would consist of discussion, negotiation, information, or instruction in relation to the advice and recommendations given while providing supervision and support to patients, relatives, and assistant staff. For the process for a person, incarcerated individual, identifying meaningful occupations and the barriers to them. For a group, participation in mental health group once a week. Population, incarcerated individuals advocate for occupational justice and other jail/prison systems.
Contributions to the consultation process: OT certifications available, certified industrial rehabilitation specialist, and a mental health first aid certification. Other professionals: social worker for funding, music therapist for group activities, occupational therapy assistant for implementing the intervention process, and a psychologist who can aid in treatment and identification of mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders.
And that is the conclusion of our presentation. The next slides are just our references to look over. Thank you.